Hello. I am really happy to be speaking to you all today, and I'm going to share my screen
来，
now and put my
我
slides
现
up.
在想给大家分享一下我的屏幕。
Okay, and I'm going to do that. Okay, so are visible,
大家
and
好，
I am going to discuss
我
now
想和大家
the
沟通
work that I do in
我的工
California
作，
and
在
around the
所做
world
的工作，
to bring aging under comprehensive medical control. The problem that we are solving here is a problem that was created because we solved a different problem already. Of course, the problem that we solved already was the problem of early death from infectious diseases like tuberculosis. In every country in the world, at least 1/3 of babies used to die before the age of 1. And now that doesn't happen. In every country in the world, the average lifespan is more than 50. And that means that there is far less death early in life. But, of course, if you don't die early in life, then that means you live long enough to suffer from the health problems of late life. And those problems are gradual and progressive, and they kill you very slowly. Of course, I'm talking about things like Alzheimer's disease, heart disease, and type 2 diabetes. And because they are so slowly progressive, they are incredibly expensive. So, for example, in the United States, the proportion of health, of the budget, of the total economy that is spent on healthcare has gone up by a factor of 4 in only 50 or 60 years. That's the green line here, gone up from 5% to 18% in just 50 years, and it's gone up even more since then. So this is a big problem. Now, we must ask ourselves, why is it a problem? Why have the same approaches, the same medicines that worked so well against early death, why have they not worked against death late in life, the diseases of late life? Most people think that it's just because there are so many of them. Don't worry, you're not supposed to be able to read this slide. I'm just trying to show you how many things go wrong with us late in life. But actually, that's not the main reason. In order to describe the main reason, I'm going to start by giving you a definition of the word aging. That's actually really surprising that I would need to do that because, you know, everybody cares about aging. So you would think we would know what it is. But actually, different people have different definitions. So here's my definition. Aging consists of two processes. There's the one on the left that you can see here, where the processes of metabolism, the processes that keep us alive from one day to the next, generate damage in the body. They change our molecular and cellular structure. And the body is set up to tolerate some damage, but not an unbounded amount. So eventually, there's too much damage. And that's when the right-hand process happens. We start to see the pathologies of late life when there is more damage than what the body is set up to tolerate. Now, why is that so important? Well, I'm sorry, wait a moment, please. I am having trouble with my slides. Okay, let's see what happens now. Good. All right. So the thing is that people don't actually define aging in the way that I just described. If you ask people for a classification of the ways in which somebody can be sick, most people will tell you something like what you're seeing on this slide here. They will say, okay, there are infectious diseases, that's column 1. Then there are genetic diseases that a few people get from their parents, that's column 2. And then there's the big one, the chronic diseases of late life, such as Alzheimer's disease or atherosclerosis, or all of the things that I put on that slide a few minutes ago. And then most people think that there is this completely different, separate thing called aging itself, which consists of things like frailty, not really diseases. In fact, they think that aging itself is completely different from diseases and is somehow not treatable with medicine, even in principle. And that's a huge problem. The way that they ought to think about the classification of ways to be sick is like this. If you look at this slide, you will see that all the columns are the same as on the previous slide, but the big, thick black line is in a different place. And that tells you that the things in column 3 are not very like the things in column 1, so we should not expect to be able to treat them with the same kind of medicine as we do for infections. But it also tells you that the things in column 3 are no different from the things in column 4. They are both parts of aging. They should not be considered to be different. Now, why is that mistake so important? Why is it doing so much damage that people get this wrong? Well, it's because of what I'm showing you here. If you get it wrong, if you think about column 4, aging itself, as being off limits to medicine, and you only focus on column 3, and you try to treat it as if it were infections, then you're going to do this. You're going to try to attack the pathologies of late life directly and cure them in the same way that we cure an infection. And obviously it doesn't work, because these pathologies are consequences of this damage which is accumulating. So inevitably, any geriatric medicine is going to become progressively less effective as people get older. It's just never going to work. Now, I am not the first person to realize this. More than a century ago, a few people started to realize that geriatric medicine would never work, and they must be more preventative. And so they said, well, okay, instead of trying to eliminate the right-hand process where damage generates pathology, let us instead try to eliminate the left-hand process where metabolism generates damage. And the idea here was that in the living world, we see a lot of variation between different species in how rapidly they age, how rapidly their metabolism generates damage. So people said, well, if we study that variation, maybe we will be able to find out how it works. And then we can use that knowledge to create medicines that cause human beings to create damage more slowly than they normally would. But that doesn't work either. And this is why it's possible to unpick this thing and this network, the creation of damage, without at the same time stopping it from doing things we need it to do to keep us alive. third possibility, and I'm going to call it the maintenance approach. You can think of it as damage repair. What we want to do is to separate damage from pathology, metabolism from pathology. And we have seen that we cannot separate metabolism from pathology by separating damage from pathology. And we also can't do it by separating metabolism from damage. But maybe we can do it if we repair damage, because if we do that, we don't need to interfere with either of the component processes. And of course, we already successfully do this with simple man-made machines like cars. This car in the photograph is more than 100 years old, and that's pretty amazing. It's working just as well as when it was built. But here's the really amazing thing. It was not designed to last 100 years. This car was only designed to last 10 years. And the reason it has actually lasted 100 years is simply because the people who owned it have done really good damage repair. That's all it is. So now, what does this mean? Well, the first thing it means is that you should not think of aging as some kind of specific thing that only happens to living organisms. The definition of aging that I gave you at the beginning could just as well be used for the aging of a car or an aeroplane or anything like that. So we know that comprehensive preventative maintenance really works. The only uncertainty that's left is about the damage in the middle, the thing that we need to repair, because maybe that's really, really, really complicated as well. And if it is, then maybe this approach is still not practical. But in fact, that's not the case. 20 years ago, I started to realize that actually we could describe all of the damage that accumulates in the human body in this very simple, manageable classification on the left-hand side of this table. These 7 types of damage, that is all that happens in the body. Those are the only things we need to repair. And on the right-hand side, I am listing the ways in which we can do it. You are probably very familiar with the first one. The type of damage in question is cell loss, where cells die and they are not automatically replaced by other cells, by the division of other cells. And the maintenance approach, the damage repair approach, is simply stem cell therapy, putting cells into the body that we have created in the laboratory and made into the right type of cell so that they will know what to do when we inject them, so that they will replace the cells that the body is not replacing on its own. Now, all of the other types of damage are less understood, less well known. And for that reason, the research to repair them is less far advanced. But our work at Sense Research Foundation has made enormous progress in developing these other repair approaches as well. Here are just a small number of the papers that we have published in top journals over the years. I am particularly proud of these ones because they were real breakthrough papers that created a whole new research area and got lots of new researchers interested in what we wanted to do. So this is very important. And perhaps what's even more important is that this general approach to combating aging and keeping people healthy late in life has now been acknowledged and accepted very strongly by the mainstream biology of aging community, by academics, professors around the world. The paper I'm showing you here, which came out 8 years ago, has been cited more often than any other paper in the whole of the biology of aging for the past decade. And it's more or less exactly the same as the paper that I published 10 years earlier. So this is something that everybody accepts now. I want to emphasize that I have talked about health for a reason. Everybody longer. But what you have to remember is that living a lot longer is a side effect of staying healthy a lot longer. We should not be thinking of health and longevity as alternatives. We should be thinking of them as things that go together. So we should not be worried about things like overpopulation, having too many people if nobody is dying of aging anymore, or having trouble paying the pensions. Because at the end of the day, it's more important, the most important thing is to eliminate the suffering that happens as a result of losing your health. Now, I'm going to finish by just briefly talking about the private sector, companies and investors, because until recently, this crusade, this work was being done by charities like Sense Research Foundation. But now, a lot of the science has moved far enough along that actual investors are getting involved. People are beginning to see how they can make money out of this technology in the foreseeable future. So the companies that I am listing here are spin-outs from Sense. We created these companies to carry on the work that we had done in the non-profit sector for a long time beforehand. And now there are far more companies than that, way over 100 companies in this space. I've just got a small selection of them here. If you go to the website that I am showing at the bottom right of this slide, agingbiotech.info, you will find a lot of information about many, many more companies. And this is coming soon. I think it may be 15 or 17 years before we really get all of this technology working well. And of course, it's pioneering that it's going to be that soon. But we will get close enough to this very soon. I think that within the next 3 or 4 or 5 years, everybody will understand that this is coming. And we really need to pay attention to that. So I will stop there. I will just mention that I wrote this book about the science of rejuvenation 13 years ago now. It was translated into Chinese. I'm afraid I don't have a link to the Chinese version, but it exists. And I will try to send some information about that to the organizers afterwards. But in the meantime, this is my book, this is our website, this is our email address, and I would be delighted if you ask me some questions. Thank you very much.
你好，我想问一下，就是我们随着我们衰老啊，细胞里面的这个损伤在累积，那么我们细胞同时呢，也有自己有一套这个修复的这个机制。那么我们导致越来越衰老，越来越虚弱，越来越疾病多，是因为这个修复的机制本身出了问题，还是这个损伤越来越多，太多了，导致它来不及修复？
That's a really good question. It is true that when we are older, the repair functions that we have at an earlier age do not work so well. But the main reason why that happens is because there are some repair functions that we don't even have when we're young. So there are some types of damage that accumulate throughout life, even starting before we are born. And it's those types of damage that really matter. When those types of damage become more abundant, that's when we become unable to repair the other types of damage that we used to be able to repair when we were younger.
So we hope we will have more chance to hear the insights from you, Dr. De Grey. Thank you very much.